Once upon a time, in the heart of Africa, there was a kingdom called Nem, ruled by the notoriously greedy King Asebike II. King Asebike's insatiable appetite for wealth, power, and women knew no bounds. His kingdom prospered, but his people suffered under his iron fist. The king had 7 wives, countless concubines, and so many children that no one could keep track. He had a peculiar method of choosing his wives. He would point his staff at a beautiful girl, and she would be whisked away to the palace to become one of his many consorts. King Asebike's reign was marked by fear and oppression. His word was law, and anyone who dared to defy him faced severe punishment. The best of the farm produce was always offered to the king before anyone else could partake. If a villager was caught stealing even a single tuber of yam, they were sentenced to cultivate an entire acre of land full of yams as punishment. This heavy-handed rule kept the people of Nem in a state of constant fear and submission. The king's greed extended beyond wealth and power to include the most beautiful women in the kingdom. He took every maiden he fancied, regardless of their wishes or those of their families. The only girls safe from his predatory gaze were those considered ugly, witches, or possessed by unwanted spirits. Desperate to protect their daughters, the villagers devised a clever plan. They began branding their beautiful daughters as witches or ogbanj, possessed by water spirits. This ploy worked for a while, as the king was superstitious and avoided these girls. Parents quietly arranged marriages for their daughters with men of their choice, away from the king's grasp. However, King Asebike was no fool. Over time, he realized he had been tricked. Furious, he declared that he would marry any girl he fancied, regardless of whether she was branded a witch or possessed. This decree plunged the kingdom back into despair, as no girl was safe from the king's greed. Among the king's many wives, Queen Amebo, his first wife, stood out. Beautiful and wise, Queen Amebo knew the king better than anyone else. She was responsible for scheduling bedtimes for the women, a task that often left some waiting for a turn that could take up to a year. The women in the palace were miserable, living in silence and suffering under the king's oppressive rule. Queen Amebo, seeing the suffering of the villagers and the wives, decided that something had to be done. She knew the kingdom could not continue under King Asebike's tyrannical rule. Determined to restore freedom to Nem, she began to devise a plan. Queen Amebo knew she couldn't overthrow the king alone. She needed the support of the other wives and the kingdom's warriors. She started by secretly meeting with the other wives, sharing her plan to dethrone the king. Initially, there was fear and hesitation, but the women, tired of their suffering, eventually agreed to support her. Next, Queen Amebo approached the head of the warriors, a man named Udo. Udo was a formidable figure, loyal to the king but not blind to his faults. Amebo knew she needed more than just words to win Udo's support, so she devised a seductive plan. One moonlit night, Queen Amebo invited Udo to a secluded part of the palace gardens. Dressed in a flowing, revealing gown that accentuated her beauty, she spoke to him with a mix of sorrow and determination. She painted a vivid picture of the suffering of the people, the misery of the women in the palace, and the kingdom's need for change. Udo was moved, but not yet convinced. Amebo stepped closer, her eyes locking onto his, and she whispered promises of power and shared rule. She leaned in, her lips brushing against his ear as she spoke of a future where they could lead the kingdom together, as equals. Udo, captivated by her beauty and the promise of power, felt his resolve waver. That night, Queen Amebo and Udo shared an intimate moment, sealing a pact that would change the fate of Nem. With Udo's support, the plan was set in motion. Early one morning, as the sun began to rise, Udo and his warriors marched to the palace. The king, unaware of the rebellion brewing within his own home, was caught off guard. Queen Amebo stood at the forefront, her eyes blazing with determination. The warriors, emboldened by Udo's leadership, refused to obey the king's orders. They surrounded him, their expressions hard and unforgiving. King Asebike, realizing the gravity of the situation, tried to assert his authority, but it was too late. The women, including Queen Amebo, stepped forward to confront him. King Asebike was arrested and brought before a hastily assembled tribunal of warriors and elders. His sins were laid bare, his greed, his oppressive rule, his insatiable appetite for women, and the suffering he had caused. The villagers gathered, watching as the man who had tormented them for years faced his reckoning. The tribunal gave King Asebike a choice: divorce all his wives, accept dethronement, and be banished from the kingdom, or face immediate death. The once mighty king, now a shadow of his former self, chose life over death. He proclaimed his abdication and divorced his wives in front of the assembled crowd. Stripped of his power and wealth, King Asebike was placed on a horse and led to the outskirts of the kingdom. The warriors escorted him, ensuring he would never return. As he rode away, the people of Nem watched in silence, their hearts filled with a mix of relief and apprehension. With King Asebike gone, the kingdom of Nem began to heal. Queen Amebo and Udo assumed leadership, ruling with wisdom and compassion. The people rejoiced as they were finally free from the tyranny that had plagued them for so long. The beautiful girls of the kingdom no longer lived in fear, and families could once again live in peace. However, Queen Amebo had one final ace up her sleeve. She had no intention of sharing power with Udo forever. She began to subtly sideline him, making strategic alliances with key figures in the kingdom and creating a group of elite women warriors known as the Amazons of Nem. These women warriors were trained in secret, learning the art of combat and strategy. Queen Amebo handpicked them from among the most capable and loyal women in the kingdom. They were fierce, loyal, and dedicated to protecting the queen and the kingdom. As Queen Amebo consolidated her power, she began to reduce Udo's influence. She assigned him tasks that took him away from the palace, and slowly but surely, she took control of the kingdom's administration. The Amazons of Nem, always by her side, ensured her safety and enforced her rule. Under Queen Amebo's rule, Nem thrived. She was a fair and just ruler, and her Amazons became a symbol of strength and empowerment for the women of the kingdom. The people of Nem never forgot the lessons learned during those dark times, and they vowed to never allow such tyranny to take root again. Years later, as the kingdom continued to prosper, Queen Amebo was remembered not just as a ruler but as a liberator and a pioneer of women's empowerment. The children of Nem grew up hearing the tales of her bravery and cunning, and the kingdom flourished in the light of her legacy. King Asebike, meanwhile, wandered the lands beyond Nem, a broken man. He lived out his days in obscurity, a cautionary figure whose name was synonymous with greed and downfall. The people of Nem never saw him again, and they lived in peace, free from his shadow forever. And so, the kingdom of Nem thrived, a testament to the power of courage, unity, and the unbreakable spirit of its people. Under Queen Amebo's rule and the protection of her Amazons, Nem became a beacon of prosperity, justice, and empowerment.
Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe.